Peace, my people. Welcome to I Must Be BUGN, where we have honest, relatable conversations packed with powerful insights that spark curiosity and help melanated, gifted, and neurodivergent folks feel seen, safe, and celebrated. Here, labels don't have to feel like pathology, and complexity feels comfortable. Welcome to the latest recap episode of I Must Be BUGN. This is Sheldon Gay, your host. As always, appreciative of you being here. This is a recap episode for the conversation that I had with Aurora Remember, which is the preceding episode to this. So go ahead and listen to the full one if you haven't listened to that one already. But today, I'm just going to share with you a few of my thoughts and takeaways that I thought were really important from that conversation. But before I do that, as always, let me do my introduction that I always share, which is that, again, my name is Sheldon Gay. I use pronouns he and him. I am a Black man in my 40s with black curly hair. It's faded on the side and the back. I have a mustache. Today, I have my goatee trimmed down more than it usually is. I have on a red hoodie, which says "Love Doesn't Require Perfection." It's a hoodie of my design. You can check it out in my shop. Behind me are a series of bookshelves with some of my favorite books and other items, including a pillow of my design, which says "Labels Don't Have to Feel Like Pathology." And so with that, let me get into some of these key takeaways that you should be thinking about before you go out and hit them streets. And so the first thing is that, Aurora is a great example of why it's so important and so valuable for us to have diagnoses and to just better understand ourselves, right? She did an amazing job of, again, sharing her story and talking about how life was different after she had a diagnosis. She talked about how it improved her relationships, how it improved her ability to navigate workspaces, right? And how she just felt better about herself. She also talked a little bit about, the power of authenticity and how it allowed her to find places that she could work, even if those places had, some things that were pretty stressful, surrounding it. The value of feeling like you belong and understanding why you belong, right? And being able to identify places where you're going to belong is really powerful, because that's a big part of our day, right? And our way of moving, whether it be at work, which certainly can take up a lot of our lives, right? We want to be able to be in places where we're not expending so much energy trying to mask, trying to balance, other people's ways of being with ours, doing all that kind of thing, that kind of stuff, right? And so another thing is, again, even in friendship circles, understanding, like, is this going to be the place for me? That authenticity piece and understanding, oh, my brain works differently. I need, you know, um, time away. I need to be able to be in a space where if I need to take a break, I can do that without people feeling like I'm shunning them or whatever, right? And so this is, again, a key part of why all this work is so important. And again, thank you, Aurora, for sharing that. Another thing that she talked about, which I thought was really, really important to mention, was this concept of self-regulation over self-control. I know a lot of us grow up and particularly kind of comes from parents and other guardians, right? And let's acknowledge that a lot of this stuff comes from a place of genuine care. Our parents, our guardians, those looking after us, those that love us, want us to be safe. They want us to have the best futures that we could possibly have. But sometimes that puts a message into our heads that the things that we're doing are wrong, right? Like outright wrong. And yeah, okay. There are some things that, like, we shouldn't go around, whatever, just, tripping old ladies and different things of that nature, right? So, like, for those of us for whom that might sound, um, that might ruffle a little bit of feathers, right? Like, what I'm not talking about those sort of very clear examples of ways in which we don't want to be. I'm talking about just the ways of us just being naturally, right? And understanding that, hey, if I, do need some extra time to process my feelings, if I do need more complexity in the things that I am, engaging with, if I do like to talk more about, just topics that maybe not everybody else is interested in, that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with me, right? And then particularly as we think about our emotions and how it means that we need to navigate spaces because, you know, certain lights or certain textures or certain other stimulants, right, can impact us. Certain smells. I know. Look, I've been in the place that I've been living. I live in this apartment building right now, and there's a smell that's been coming from somewhere in this building. I don't know. I wrote them a message about it, but it just completely disrupts my ability to even spend time in certain spaces. And I've been burning them incense more, than I usually have, right? But that doesn't make me wrong. That doesn't make, me a bad person. Doesn't even necessarily make me weird, right? But how do we then again start to rewrite some of those messages in our head that allow us the freedom to do that? Because there will be times, if we're not clear and careful about self-regulation versus self-control, where we automatically try to shut down our own feelings and our own needs because we tell ourselves they're not acceptable. And again, that doesn't make us feel any better, right? So maybe we mask in the moment, maybe we push through it in the moment, but then we feel really bad later, right? Maybe, again, the body keeps the score, right? There's this element where, now our muscles are tense, or maybe we have a headache, or maybe we just feel tired, right? And a lot of that is because we're not actually loving ourselves. We've not learned to love ourselves and to regulate ourselves more than we try to control and dominate ourselves. And I think even in using those words, you can see why that could be problematic. And so Aurora talks a little bit about that. Go and check out the episode where she talks about, again, what that can look like. And I think here's the last thing, and this is kind of the critical piece, right? Which is that higher level thinking isn't hierarchical. I loved when she said that. Absolutely loved when she said that, because this is something that is true across the board for many of us. I will say certainly for those of us who are gifted, right? But certainly as well for those of us who are twice exceptional, right? So that would be gifted with some other form of neurodivergence, particularly those that might traditionally be considered, a learning disability or anything of that nature, right? Um, and so that may mean that, yeah, I might be able to, whatever, do some fantastic calculation, or I might quickly understand concepts, but I may also, be challenged with tying my shoes, at a young age, or even at an adult age. I may have challenges with making my bed at a young age and even at an adult age. And where ableism and other things have stepped in, have started to again devalue these people, right? That value us. Because, again, I was somebody, if you listen to one of my earlier episodes, I talk about how I know that I didn't, if you gave me the choice, I would have worn Velcro, I'm sorry, sneakers for the rest of my life. I just hated tying my shoes. And some of that was like challenges with like figuring out how the loops were supposed to go and all that kind of stuff. And some of it was just like I just did not like the process. And so you could again see this young boy who could do some pretty amazing things and have conversations that certainly folks of a certain age weren't having, right? Your typical child wasn't having. But then also somebody that just didn't want to tie their shoes, walked around with their shoes untied, or walked around with Velcro shoes, and you're like, why aren't you too big for that? Right? And so again, a lot of this as well is about what we've been told about intelligence that we really need to start expanding upon and investigating and challenging, because intelligence isn't this sort of like linear path or this very straightforward thing. I think that more and more, and particularly if you're listening to this podcast, that what it means to be intelligent is not just about what you could find in, or determine within a school. And so we need to stop telling others, and we need to, again, to silence that voice that's in our heads that tells us that, again, if you can do this, you should be able to do that. And right, you can fit, whatever example in there that you'd like. And again, while it may sound intuitive, it's not the reality. The mind and body are not hierarchical, and outcomes aren't always linear. Again, some children will be able to get to things quicker than others, and these don't have to be kind of like end of the world scenarios. But the more that we treat them as if that child is demonstrating brokenness as opposed to difference, that's where we kind of become part of the system, right, of harm. And so this is how we need to be thinking about it to try to mitigate that. And so again, this has implications for lots of different spaces, right, including one of the key reasons for why it's hard for some of us to get accommodations at school or at work, because maybe you're at this fancy company, or not so fancy company, regardless, you're at this company and they've hired you and they say, okay, well, you should be able to do this. Why would you need to have this, whatever the accommodation is, right? Why would you need to wear headphones? Why would you need to not have people speaking in the office around you? Why don't you like that office chatter? Why can't you just deal with it, right? You can do all these other things. Why can't you figure that out? Yeah, these are the things that we need to push back on, and again, just really investigate, like, how true is that? Like, don't even take my word for it, right? Maybe what I'm talking about is nonsense, right? Like, challenge it. Like, go and look and see, is this true? So again, these are things that I really loved about what Aurora shared. I hope that you will go back, if you haven't already listened to it, go back and listen to the entire episode. It's a great discussion. And so, yeah, look, if you are someone who's looking for help getting to know yourself better, and you want strategies, right, for navigating spaces where you want to always feel seen, safe, and celebrated, visit my website, sheldongaysbugn.com. It's in the show notes, and set up a call where we can discuss a plan for doing just that, right? And so with that, thank you again for listening, and remember these 3 things. 1, take time today to help a child feel seen. Make sure that you start with your inner child. 2, don't be clever, be wise. Change yourself, and you will truly change the world. And then lastly, as I always say, labels don't have to feel like pathology. All right. Thank you so much. See you on the next episode. Thank you for joining me on another episode of I Must Be BUGN. I hope you felt seen, safe, and celebrated by what you heard today. Don't forget to visit my website, sheldongaysbugn.com, where you can catch all of my episodes, book me to speak, and check out my merch. Don't hesitate to hit me up on socials either. I'm eager to hear your thoughts, your experiences, and your stories. Remember, this podcast is all about sharing humanized narratives about who we are and how we contribute to the beautiful and necessary diversity of humanity. This is our place to unmask and just be. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend, leave a review, and subscribe. It helps our people find community. So until next time, stay up and enjoy who you were meant to be. Ashe.